like we are live. It is 6 o'clock. Caucus is in session. Agenda. Anyone with anything to add? Item 5, committees, summer recess. Line item 6, if we can add salary ordinance emergency. And number 7, transfer ordinance read. Anyone with anything else to add tonight? Seeing nothing. Fiscal officers report, just the bills tonight?
Yes.
Yes, okay, perfect. Council minutes, has everyone received and had a chance to review? Perfect. Tonight's legislation, is everyone familiar with this evening's legislation? All righty. Council committees and summer recess. I will motion during my report that we are due to enter into summer recess. The dates that we had discussed for the summer meetings yesterday, is there any issues with anyone as far as vacation or attendance? All right, so tentatively, we're going to look to set those meetings for June 16th and 17th, being committees that followed by council, July 14th and 15th with committees followed by council, and August 11th and 12th with committees and council. Those will all tentatively be Zoom meetings, just based on the circumstances, and also based on what we're dealing with the COVID. Should we need to have additional meetings, are we all in agreement that we will set those as we deem necessary? Perfect. All right, line item number 6, we have the salary ordinance emergency read. Mr. Fisher, if you could expand on that.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Lewis. As discussed in yesterday's committee meetings, due to the responsive nature of this virus, Chief Stitt did see a situation arise that, should we have increase in ambulance runs, and should we have staff down due to the virus, to put a contingency plan in place to be able to use our firefighters as ambulance drivers, even though they're not qualified medics or EMTs. So it's spelled out who would have to be there to transport, but this would allow us to use our current staff, our firefighters, as drivers specifically, and it spells that out at $9.25 an hour. But because of the urgency of this, we needed to pass it as an emergency so that we could implement that should we see spikes in ambulance runs and cases that we need to handle.
All right. Everyone in favor of that? All right, Mr. Fisher, will you amend that on the agenda?
Yes.
Perfect. And then line item number 7, transfer ordinance read. Right now, we do have a first read of a transfer ordinance for some unclaimed funds. In light of our meeting schedule, we discussed yesterday, it would be best that we do pass that as a first, second, and third read all this evening. So, Mr. Fisher, if you would be so kind as to amend the agenda for that. All right. Anything else for caucus this evening? All righty. Seeing nothing else, it is 6:04, and caucus is closed.
Do we want to take a break, or do we want to go immediately into council? Marty, you're muted out on your phone. There you go.
There we go.
Hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to call to order McDonald Village Council for Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. Roll.
Lori, you're muted.
Sorry. Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Here,
Mr. Fisher,
Present.
Mr. DeZee,
You're muted, Cliff.
Huh?
You're muted.
You're muted.
We can't hear you.
Mr. Desir,
I'm
you here?
trying.
Mr. DeZee,
Here.
Mr. Schmidt,
Present.
Mr. Joines.
Here. I got it.
And for the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States.
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll also have a moment of silence for the troops serving here and abroad, and also everyone affected by COVID-19. In the Lord's Prayer, if you so choose. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Kingdom come, thy will be done, earth as it is now in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Give us our trespasses,
As we
those
forgive
who trespass against us,
Trespass against us.
non temptation,
Down,
temptation,
first root,
and all
now is it kingdom, power, glory, forever.
Amen.
on to approval of minutes for council meeting on April 22nd, 2020.
Move to approve as mailed.
Moved by Councilman Fisher to approve those as mailed. Discussion. Roll.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Moving on to adoption of the agenda.
Okay, I move to amend the agenda under legislation to change legislation C to waive the 3-read process and to add legislation E, which would be an emergency reading of a salary ordinance for fire EMT paramedic.
Moved by Councilman Fisher to amend the agenda in legislation C, waive the 3-read process, and also add legislation E, a salary ordinance. Discussion. Roll.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Moving on to the mayor's report. The monthly mayor's court report. Computer Fund 1, $30. Court costs, $79. Additional costs, $29. City revenue from fines, $110. Niles Municipal Court fines, $898.70. Law Enforcement Fund, $60. Drug Fund, $268.30. For a total to the city of $1,475. The only other thing I'd like to add today was we did talk about the parks in committees yesterday. We'd like to open them up as soon as possible. We're keeping some of our events on hold. Some of them have been canceled, but we will get back to our parks as soon as we can do it safely. So I appreciate everyone's patience, and we'll get back to normal business as soon as possible. Thank you. Moving on to reports of village officials. Our village administrator, Mr. Dimitrovich.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to start with, I did turn in a quarterly employee expense report to the mayor and fiscal chairman. I'd like to get that to a monthly report. It was a busy first part of the year though, so I got that out as a quarterly report, looking to get it in as a monthly report as soon as I can. On another matter, I did get in the Trumbull County Senior Levy grant for our community room with the help of Lori Canada, Millie Ritz, Christine Elks, Peggy Palmer, and especially Amy Cunningham. I did get that reported to the grant into the senior levy services, and I hope that the commission gets back on the application and we can keep our programming going at the community room. I did apply for $34,515. The county administrators did say they would aid in reviewing them and getting a request back to. I'm sorry, is there a echo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna hold this. Is that better? I don't know. Quickly then, I am invited to attend meetings via Zoom with the school pre-construction. It started May 5th for the construction of the stadium. GPD has invited me, and I don't know. I will be attending those as they are announced. Sorry, I'm gonna end there. I don't know what's happening with that.
I forgot I was muted. Because Marty's in on the computer and his phone. His phone's picking up the audio from his computer. So if there's a possibility, Marty, whenever everybody else is talking, if you can mute the phone out, you shouldn't get that feedback.
My phone is muted.
Okay. Just in conclusion, if anybody's wondering, we have a water line repair. It's a service line to the recreation building. Our employees are back there working. If there were any questions, we discovered a leak on the building over there, and we had to do a repair back to the main. So just to let everybody know. So if there's any questions, I'll take them now, but I'm done.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Mr. Dimitrovich?
I just want to thank Thomas for all the hard work he does to put into the program for our elderly in the community. I think it's an awesome thing we have.
Thank you. Moving on to our police chief, Chief Woodley.
Thank you, Mayor. As everyone knows, the commencements for our graduates are this Saturday. So I wanted to take this opportunity to congratulate all of the seniors of the class of 2020 and wish them the best in all their future endeavors. They've completed an already difficult undertaking and made it even more difficult by the pandemic. But they came through the adversity and met the challenges head on. Congratulations again, class of 2020. Second of all, I'd like to address, as a result of the pandemic and Governor DeWine's stay-at-home order, back in March, I instructed our officers to soften and even suspend enforcement of some village ordinances, such as parking in the street. I just want to make everyone aware, effective June 1st, the police department will begin to enforce these ordinances once again. And my monthly report has been submitted to council and the mayor. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
I do have a question, Chief,
Sure.
if I may. We had spoke last night, and Councilman Fisher may allude to this as well. I was just questioning and just making sure that all of our police as well as EMTs and that are having the correct PPE for them, and that we have enough to supply to them if they have to make calls at any time.
Yes, at this time, we've received a lot of donations from outside sources, and as well as the EMA, EOC. They've also been distributing to all the safety services. Right now, we're stocked up pretty good.
Thank you. Moving on to our fire chief, Chief Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. My report's been submitted. If there's any questions, I'll attain them now. If not, thank you, sir.
Any questions or comments for Chief Smith? Moving on to our solicitor, Mr. Ross.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, but nothing for the record tonight.
Thank you. Comments or questions for Mr. Ross? Moving on to committee reports. President Pro Tem, Mr. Lewis.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We met this evening for caucus at 6 p.m. via Zoom. We closed at 6:04. We discussed the agenda, fiscal officers report, council minutes, tonight's legislation, committees and council dates for summer, which we will set as committees being the first date, the meeting being the second of June 16th and 17th, July 14th and 15th, and August 11th and 12th, all to be tentatively held via Zoom meeting. We also discussed the need to enter into summer recess. So at this time, I'd like to motion that we as a council do enter into summer recess.
By Councilman Lewis to enter into summer recess. Discussion.
Yes, and again, although we are entering into summer recess, should there be a need to conduct additional meetings based on the COVID crisis going on, we're all in agreement that we will meet as needed.
Roll.
Or
So sorry. Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher.
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Alrighty, in addition, we did discuss the salary ordinance as an emergency read, which Mr. Fisher, I'm sure, will expand upon during his report. And the transfer ordinance read, which I will discuss during finance. Finally, obviously yesterday we did try a different format of the Zoom meeting and seeing how both of them work, although they are not perfect. We went back to the original format just based on logistics and better quality. So we probably would use this moving forward. Last but not least, as Chief Woodley said, I do want to send a quick congratulations to the class of 2020. I know we have 3 proud parents right here on this meeting. So to Nate and Zach, congratulations. I have to say congratulations to my son, Riley, and all of their classmates. I know that all of us in here, we've watched you grow up. We, along with your parents, your teachers, your coaches, are extremely proud of all of you. As Chief Woodley said it, you've conducted yourselves throughout something that None of us have experience to this point, and none probably will moving forward, with the utmost of integrity in class, and it will definitely benefit you all moving forward. So congratulations to the class of 2020. Enjoy this Saturday. Remember about it what you can, and best of luck with life moving forward. So that is all. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We met last night at 6:23, and some of the items we discussed and some of the things you covered on is there is cancellations. The Memorial Day service has been canceled. It's been posted. If people want to stop down and pay their respects through the weekend or whatever, but the actual ceremony by, that's with participation has been canceled. Also, the Relay for Life, if I'm not mistaken, that one has also been canceled as far as the festivities at the park. They will be still collecting money, taking donations and that kind of thing, but the actual relay, from my understanding, Thomas has contacted him, and that unfortunately has to also be canceled. Other things that the mayor touched on, all park festivities are canceled at the moment. There'll be no park teachers, there'll be no festivities over at the park. Splash pad, anything is all canceled and closed until further notice. We're going to be monitoring this. We think maybe, we'd like to see something maybe in July, but that's just, nobody really knows at this point. And the sooner we get more news from, your governor, our governor, and what they want to do. As we know, in our park, it's a tough thing when we have, everything is close, the kids, and try to keep things clean. And we are here to protect our, the residents, and also the, if we have to bring on our park teachers, make sure that they're protected also. So it's a work in progress. We, as the mayor said, we're waiting to see how things roll as far as any part of the park is going to be open. But people who are looking for that park to open in June, that is at this point not going to happen. There has been nobody hired, nobody put on. We want to be honest with our students who applied for park teachers that, we don't know where it's going right now. And to tell them, yeah, we're going to put you on and not be able to use them, it just, wasn't the right thing to do. So they've all been informed, but we're on a hold and see basis. We like to open up things as we get there, but as they said, there's no vaccine available for what we have, and for all the equipment we have in the park and things we do. Closeness is part of what they do over there. Everything from the swings to the merry-go-round, and how do you sanitize and keep those things and keep our kids and our residents and our seniors, everybody safe over there. And that's the big challenge. We're not just a national park. We're a park of closeness, and kids go over there and do all together, and same with the parents and our grandparents. They sit on the benches, they go over there, and we have to find out how we're going to do that, if it's going to be done. And we listen for the guidelines, and we will make decisions based on the best information that we have. But for right now, as the mayor said, please don't look forward to that being open, because it's not going to be open as of now. And we're on status quo on the park. Music in the park is things that we still have on the schedule, but that would begin around July 9th, the first one. But again, we're going to be able to have that or not have that. We'll know more about that maybe into June too, to see if that's going to go on. And everybody's thinking about how to, outside the box and how to do things, but you just got to realize there's no vaccine, and we want to protect everybody. And we love to have people in our park right now. Nobody more than me would love to have people in our park right now, but it's just not the time. And I hope everybody understands that and are patient. But just realize we have to protect everybody, from, like I said, everybody that comes into there. So Mayor, thank you again. We'll all be monitoring that. We discussed some of the fencing in the house that we tore down, getting that taken care of. Everything else is pretty much on hold. We closed at 6:32. Tom, Mayor, anybody else on the committee, did I miss anything? Anybody have anything to add, or Mayor, anything you have to add on what's going on? Anybody? Okay.
The only thing I'd like to add was that, obviously, you all want Can you guys hear me better now?
It's just slow, that's all.
Assuming you said finance.
Give me safety.
All righty. We met last evening via Zoom from the community room.
You skipping safety?
Oh, we are.
That's all right.
We got safety.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Before I give the report, I know we talked a little bit yesterday about trying to get into contact with the Board of Health. And I did contact the Director of Nurses for Trumbull County Board of Health today. They did have a very busy day of meetings, so I was not able to speak with her directly, but I am awaiting some information. So I'll try to stay abreast of the number of cases that McDonald has as we progress, as we open things back up, so that the mayor and the council can make better decisions as to how fast or how slow we need to move on opening or closing things back up in relation to how it's affecting McDonald's specifically. As far as the report from the committee last night, we did meet at 6:01 in the community center. Chief Woodley did submit his month-end report. He did discuss the fact that he's been in contact with T Moffitt, a company that is going to be upgrading our servers and our computer software. We have a situation now where a lot of the state agencies are upgrading their software. And without us upgrading, we won't be able to interface with their systems. So we don't want our police department to be in a situation where they can't communicate at state level. So we're going to have to look at those. We did discuss the fact that the cruiser that we ordered had originally been a 17-week estimated delivery date. And unfortunately, due to the situation, the cruiser has not even gone into production yet. And we have some issues with our fleet right now. It's going to come close to putting us in some bad situations. So hopefully, we can shuffle some of the vehicles around for Chief Woodley to use. Let's hope that they get our cruiser into production here before long. We're also waiting to hear from Hudson Radio so that we can do a test in the village, a new market to make sure that we have complete coverage. I'm sure that as things open up, his schedule will probably roll out a little bit faster. I'm sure with everybody being down and stuff, they'll scale back his appointments. Chief Stitt also did submit his month-end report. One of the things we talked about in the last meeting was the audit that Ohio Cat did on our fire engine, one of the fire engines, and the repairs that were necessary there. We did receive a couple of quotes for the front wheel bearings. We also received some quotes for the rear tires that are going to be replaced. So we'll move forward, as needed there. But I did want to especially send a shout out to some of the members of the fire department that did some troubleshooting on their own and were able to fix some of the issues that they were having in the electrical end on the dash. We'll call them warning lights. So we were able to resolve that on our own without spending the money to repair that. So good job on the fire department's end. He did receive a notification from the state fire marshal's agency that we did obtain a grant to be able to purchase 3 sets of turnout gear. So that's nice. Again, we're going to commend Chief Stitt because he's been able to, in conjunction with a grant writer, obtain a ridiculous amount of money so far since he's taken over his tenure for the village on behalf of the fire and EMS department there. And without that money, some of our budget looks pretty rough when we try to buy these things. So nice job, Chief Stitt. And also, too, on tonight's legislation, we have a proposal for a salary ordinance, which would include drivers. And this is a little bit different than the past because of the situation we have with the COVID. We are going to allow firefighters who are already on our insurance that have passed we're going to call it driver's training with the ambulance and all the necessary checks with Chief Stitt to be able to operate the ambulance. So that if we have an increased number of calls or if our staffing is down due to the virus, it will still enable us to handle the amount of calls that is necessary here in the village. We did close that meeting at 6:11. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to entertain them.
Thank you. Moving on to our finance and capital improvements chair, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor. We met for finance yesterday by Zoom from the community room at 6:11. We closed at 6:23. We did discuss our 3 pieces of legislation this evening, one of which is our second read of the 1.5 mil levy renewal that has been on the books. Our second read of our drug fines money, and the first read of the transfer ordinance, which we are going to pass the first, second, and third this evening. That is for uncashed and unclaimed funds, one of which being in the form of a park attendant check that was not cashed. If the individual has stated that they do not seek the money, so the money will go back into the village funds. And the other is for unclaimed water deposits from those that have gone unclaimed. The other piece of legislation was the emergency read of the budget amendment. That is for something Mr. Fisher already discussed, which is for the nearly $10,000 in grant money for the turnout gear, the $28,000 in grant money for the heart monitor for the ambulance, and the $563 stimulus check. So in order to get those funds to be used by the end of June, we do need to pass this as an emergency. So, one last thing we did make mention of, obviously we are going through a time that is unprecedented. The unemployment rate is at an all-time high. Obviously we were already bracing for the income tax losses from the closure of Lordstown, and now we've been impacted potentially by the loss of revenue from the COVID crisis, from both the income tax level and potentially from the state, which the mayor mentioned yesterday, which could be as high as from the state level, 10% cuts. We don't know what it will be on the other end, but just moving forward for 2020, our budget is set. We are financially sound, but we are asking everyone to look at our spending and how we are spending, because 2021 has a lot of unknowns, and we need to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So that is all I had this evening, and committees will meet for summer recess again, and it will be the 14th or 16th of June by Zoom, and that's all. I think the mayor may have paused.
Does look like he's frozen.
All right. In his absence, our third chair, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Councilman Lewis. Service did meet via Zoom at 6:32 p.m. We went into executive session with the full service committee, Mayor Puckett, Solicitor Ross, Mr. Dimitrovich, the remaining council members. We exited
Thank you.
at 8:11 p.m. and service closed at 8:11.
Moving on to our service chair, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor. I went ahead and discussed service, and that we opened at 6:32 p.m. I'll just repeat myself for you. We did enter into executive session immediately with with a full service committee, the mayor, Mr. Dimitrovich, Solicitor Ross, and the remaining council members. We did exit executive session at 8:11 p.m. and close service at 8:11 p.m. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
I assume at this point he's called for planning. I saw him talking. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
At this point, planning doesn't,
Moving on to our planning commission representative, Mr. Fisher.
yes, again, planning at this time doesn't have any real pressing business. So due to the virus, I think it's unnecessary to meet, at least in a community center. If we should have anything arise, I think that we could go to this format and handle it on an as-needed basis. That would be posted on the board and notification set to the media. So if we should have anything, again, if it arises, we'll have a meeting. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to entertain them.
I think the mayor's trying to call in.
Yep.
Yeah, so if we can maybe give him a couple minutes, or if you guys want to move on, President Pro Tem, whatever you decide you want to do.
Let's hang tight for a couple of minutes if we can, if he can call in.
Yeah, with that format, he's got to be probably 10 feet away from his computer to not have that feedback on his phone.
Hey, Brian? Brian?
Yes, Harv?
Has there been any movement yet as far as the rezoning of the plot next to the fire department there, the city building that we took the house down? Is there any movement of what we're gonna do there?
I know Thomas and Doug were working on that. So as soon as they come with, whatever kind of proposal we need to rezone that to make that the parking lot, we'll move forward with, I'm sure, a meeting of some kind so that we can move forward on that.
Thank you.
As he's dialing back in, we'll move on to our community trust representative, Mr. DeZee.
Thank you, Councilman Lewis. I have no report at this moment. Thank you.
All righty. We'll give him another couple of seconds here. Just hang tight if everyone doesn't mind. All righty. Moving on to remarks from Mrs. Cunningham, did we receive any correspondence?
We've received none.
So there will be none this evening. Seeing nothing under old business, nothing under new business. Legislation. We have legislation A.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Pro Tem.
Sure. I think he might be. No, there we go. I believe the mayor may be back.
I'll hold for a second.
Okay. Again, not the best of circumstances, but we make do with what we have. I believe he exited back out with the phone.
Looks like it.
Mr. Ross?
Want me to proceed?
Yes, please.
All right, thank you. Legislation A, we have a second reading of a resolution to proceed and submit to the electors of the Village of McDonald, Ohio, the question of the renewal of a current operating levy of 1 5/10 mils for a period of 5 years for the purpose of providing a renewal of funds for the current operating expenses of the village.
All right, I'm going to pass it as a second read. That was moved by myself, Councilman Lewis. Discussion and roll.
Or you're on mute.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Pass the second read.
The mayor just, he's trying to get on. He's having a problem with his audio. He said he
Okay.
can listen, but he's having a problem with his audio.
Is he okay with us moving forward, or would he prefer that we pause the meeting at this point? Since you're in communication.
Okay. He said, go ahead.
Okay. All right, Mr. Ross?
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. Legislation B is a second reading of a resolution adopting a written internal control policy for the Village of McDonald Police Department's use and disposition of money paid to the village from mandatory drug fines.
Move to pass the second read. And that was moved by myself, Councilman Lewis. Discussion and roll.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Pass the second read. Moving on to Councilman. Legislative. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. We have a first reading of a resolution transferring funds within various funds within the Village of McDonald, Ohio for a period beginning January 1, 2020 and ending December 31, 2020.
Move to suspend the rules of council. Moved by myself to suspend the rules of council. Discussion and roll.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
And move to pass as a first, second, and third read. Was moved by myself again, and discussion. Again, we are passing this as a first, second, and third read due to our meeting constraints at this point in time due to COVID, in order to get these funds timely transferred into their required locations. Roll.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Motion passed. And legislation D.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. Legislation D is an emergency reading of an ordinance to amend appropriations for 2020 to various divisions of the village government for each of the several objects for which the Village of McDonald, Ohio has to provide out of the monies known to be in the treasury of said village during the year from the collection of all taxes and from all other sources of revenue for 2020.
Move to suspend the rules of council. It's moved by myself, Councilman Lewis, to suspend the rules of council. Discussion and roll.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
And move to pass as an emergency. Moved by myself, Councilman Lewis. Discussion, again, as we discussed last evening and I discussed during my report, the premise behind the emergency read is so that we can utilize the grant funds that Chief Stitt has acquired by the June deadline. So this is a matter of use it or lose it. So this is our option. Roll.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
All right, motion passed. Legislation E.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. We have an emergency reading for legislation E of an ordinance amending previous village ordinance number 3230-19 regarding the wages of the part-time firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics.
Move to suspend the rules of council.
Moved by Mr. Fisher to suspend the rules of council. Discussion? Roll.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Move to pass as an emergency.
Moved by Mr. Fisher to pass the salary ordinance as an emergency. Discussion?
Yes, just real quick, President Pro Tem, as we discussed in yesterday's meeting and today in committee report, we did see a potential need in increased calls to have some of the firefighters be able to operate the ambulances as drivers. Should we see an increased call volume? So it does afford them the opportunity at the rate of $9.25 an hour. And again, this is all emergency related because we're in the middle of this pandemic. So that's the reason for the emergency.
All righty, roll.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Moving on to the fiscal officer's report.
Thanks. I, Lord Canada, Fiscal Officer for the Village of McDonald, Ohio, do hereby declare that the bills are true and correct in the amount of $148,732.74, and the money is in the bank to pay them.
And I will move to accept the VFO's report and pay the bills. That was moved by myself. Discussion? Roll.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Moving on, seeing nothing under miscellaneous.
Yeah, I have something I want to mention.
All right, Mr. Harvey.
Yeah, one other thing we want to mention is the postponement of the fire festival in June. That has been postponed to tentatively October the 10th. So we want to make sure everybody knows that will not be happening. It has been postponed and tentatively we schedule for a one-day event for October 10th.
All right, thank you, Mr. Harvey. Seeing nothing else under miscellaneous. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Mr. Harvey to adjourn. Discussion. Roll.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. DeZee,
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Joines.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.